The last one we had was in September. So I want to welcome everyone to the meeting. Welcome to the meeting. So I'll go ahead. The meeting is organized by Clean Technology Hub and all right, sorry for the short breakage. So Clean Technology Hub is a pioneering hub for research, development, demonstration, and incubation of clean and green ideas and technologies in Africa, and their validation for commercial stage development. We are also an early stage startup for incubators for inventions, innovations within the clean energy space. We're also a consultant for sustainability and energy efficiency solutions, and a driver of clean energy and climate smart investments in Africa. So our approaches, we do research, policy and strategy advisory, design thinking and analytics, training and advocacy, startup incubation and acceleration. The first webinar was held on 30th September 2021, which was aimed at creating awareness into the development of e-mobility in Nigeria. It's focused on the important role of solar and mini grids in providing charging infrastructure to electric vehicles. We all know that one of the major challenges for the adoption of electric vehicle in Nigeria is access to electricity. So the first webinar dwelt on that. So some of the key takeaways from the webinar include there is a great need for Nigeria to fasten the adoption rate through awareness creation and advocacy for the right legislation and government support for manufacturers of EVs. The EV market is at its early stage, so there is a need for more cooperation among mini grid developers and the EVs manufacturers to provide infrastructure such as charging stations. And also there is a lack of data on e-mobility generally, which is a challenge, as more readily data will greatly help the development of an ecosystem that exists for both research and data purposes. So there is a need to begin to collect this data for market usage. And then another point raised was the intersection between the sector and gender, highlighting the vast opportunities for women within this space. So this webinar, titled E-Mobility and the Nigerian Automotive Market, is aimed at identifying opportunities for growth within the e-mobility sector. It will discuss growth opportunities, financing models, and skills development that will foster the adoption and development of e-mobility in Nigeria. Industry experts will be discussing these topics and also answer questions regarding e-mobility in Nigeria. So meet our panelists. We have Mr. Tolulope Olukokun. He is the CEO of Thinkbikes Limited, and he's interested in the green economy to push us to sustainability and green environment. Which informs his activities over the years with Think Electric Africa initiative. He has been named as the 2021 Climate Ambassador, and he won the African Under 40 Green Award. We have Ms. Glory. She's the founder and CEO of Renewable Energy Technology Training Institute, RETTI. She created the Global Coalition for Electric Vehicles to gather youth to activate and drive action for development of electric vehicles in African countries. She pioneered the African Fellowship for Energy Leaders to groom and mentor the youth generation of African energy leaders who will drive sustainable energy transition. We have engineer Uchendu Chukwuebuka. He's the technical lead at Jet Motors Company and an electric automobile expert. He's an electric vehicle enthusiast who worked on the federal government of Nigeria panel on the development of national occupational strategies for electric vehicles in Nigeria. He handled a section on the migration of mobility to e-mobility in the Nigerian Auto Journalists Association workshop. And then we have Frank Chukwu, who is the senior project lead for Max.NG. He's key to all the strategic partnership and operations of Max.NG. And he's a motivated individual, and he has passion for technological drive. And our moderator is Chisom Udemezue. She's assistant manager knowledge management at Clean Technology Hub. She conceptualized programs and trainings that develop the capacity of entrepreneurs and sets them and supports them to the next scale growth. And she is also a GIZ certified solar PV installation. Thank you. I will hand it over to the moderator now so that she could moderate the session. Thank you very much. Chisom, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Bianchi. Warm welcome to our esteemed panelists and participants. Welcome to, can everyone hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you, Chisom.
Welcome to our second webinar in our series of webinars on e-mobility. Welcome to Frank, welcome to Glory, Chukwuebuka, and Tolulope. So over the next hour, we'll try and extensively cover the e-mobility and automotive markets and identify opportunities for growth. After this session, the recording will be shared with all the participants, and just encourage you to make this interactive. Drop your questions on the chat box, and we'll try as much as possible to attend to them. So this question goes to all the panelists, and I guess Glory can start first. Can you give us a brief of what you do and its impact on the e-mobility space?
Good morning, everyone. Hope you can see and hear me clearly. It's nice to be here. First, I want to thank Clean Tech Hub for putting together such an important webinar to discuss something that is going to disrupt the African countries. So I got interested in the e-mobility sector after I completed a course that was last year. And I was amazed by the degree of opportunities that Africa can benefit from this sector, especially looking at the e-sector, the e-mobility sector, not just for mass transit, not just for luxury, but for mass transit as well. You know, so because the sector is very nascent, I wanted to play a role, right? I saw how certain business models could disrupt the sector looking at our local transport systems. And so I was like, if we can put the youth together to start this conversation, and not just that, exposing to African governments and companies these opportunities was paramount in my mind. So I began to write. I started first by writing a lot on the subject matter. Most of my writings were getting traction. I also had conversations with people in government. And so that was it. We put together the Global Youth Coalition for Electric Vehicles, just to be like a gathering of youth to galvanize the needed action. So my role is simple: to present the opportunities available in the sector and exactly what people can do to get into the industry and what governments can do to deploy electric vehicles within their countries, most especially because most African countries do not have a policy or regulation for the sector, because many of them do not yet understand how the EV sector can disrupt the economy. Most of them think that their countries are not ready. And so that's kind of like my role, to help make it simple, support companies or governments wanting to get into the sector on business models and market strategy for how to deploy these vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that answer. I think my key takeaway would be the need to expose the opportunities in the space to government and your role as a supporter of companies and governments looking to transition into the e-mobility space. Thank you so much for that insight. And so I'll be asking Tolulope the same questions. What has really been your, what do you do and what is its impact on the e-mobility space?
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tolulope, as been introduced earlier. Sorry for coming in late. I had a lot of logistical issues. And I appreciate Glory for what she's doing in this sector. Basically, I'm the founder of Think Electric Africa, and our mission is to accelerate the adoption, intensify the adoption or the transition from, of Africa to renewable energy and sustainable transport. We believe that e-mobility as well as renewable energy go hand in hand, and we cannot separate them. And I always say that for us to decarbonize the energy sector, we first of all need to decarbonize the transportation sector, because energy push the transportation sector is make use of a lot of energy. And if we say we want to, change over to clean source, it is not easy to use the same intensity or magic wand for transportation sector. So we need to look at the transportation sector first of all. So that's where our organization comes in. We have been able to identify the enormous opportunity available, economic wise, job wise. I mean, think of it, even the climatic benefits from moving to e-mobility. So what we do majorly is to build capacity of young people. We have trained over 1,000 people in this sector. We have been able to convert at least 2 cars from petrol engine to electric vehicle. We're working on biogas to generate energy for electricity as well as for cooking. And recently we just made it smart. And you can now, monitor your biogas with your phone and, begin to do quite a lot of things. So what we do majorly to achieve this is we do research, we do development. We have a lot of patents for our research and development. We'll do education, we do advocacy. And, like this kind of webinar we are having, we are able to educate quite a lot of minds, preparing them for the future of work. That is available when it comes to e-mobility. Quite a number of people do not realize that for an average transporter, you tend to gain a lot using electric vehicle for your daily transportation and all of that. You are able to, there's no maintenance issue. A lot of people using Tesla today, because of regenerative braking system, have not been able to even change their brake pad in years. So quite a lot of things, no help to change, fewer parts to run, no maintenance majorly. So, and I often use 2 things in our house to describe this. When you look at your generator, majorly every houses in Nigeria use generator, right? And one other thing you use is a pumping machine. Majorly every household use a pumping machine. Now, you will discover that both of these are daily utilities that you use daily. You pump water daily, and maybe you run your generator daily, depending on where you live. So now you often service your generator almost, let's say, monthly, if you don't use it very often. But your pump, you have even forgotten you have it. All you do is just put it on and you pump water. For a year or so, you might not bother whether it's working or not. Okay, the difference is that basically this one is using electricity and the other one is using gasoline. And when you're using gasoline, it builds up dirty like carbon and all of that. You need to, and different moving parts they will wear out and all of that. So basically, if you look at the current kind of transportation we have and electric mobility, and you compare it together, you will see a lot of benefits for electric vehicle rather than electric mobility. Rather than the internal combustion engine we are currently using. So we've been able to gather youth, train them, show them a lot of things that is available and that is possible within the nature of law and all of that. law of nature and all of that. So the other part is that we have a startup now on micromobility. We are the only African startup that is manufacturing locally electric bicycles. And we also won the Siemens Innovation Call in July. Out of 5 given in Africa, we are the only one in Nigeria here. And we hope our product will hit the market in the first quarter of next year. And basically, that's what we've been doing when it comes to e-mobility, automotive industry, and all of that in Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That has been quite explosive. And just to summarize, you mentioned you spoke to the need to decarbonize the work that you're doing through research and capacity building, and through webinars such as this to drive change in the space, and about the micro mobility startup manufacturing. And I'll come back to that, but I am throwing the same question to Uchendu, Chukwuebuka. If you're online, could you please answer?
Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Uchendu, as mentioned, and we are Jet Motor Company. I'm technical lead for Jet Motor Company. At Jet Motor Company, our focus has been to lead Africa into the future of mobility by producing vehicles that are good for the African road. Now, looking at the fact that 23% of road transport contribute to global emission, we have always had this in mind to go into the e-mobility space, even though from the onset, we started with the assembly of vehicles that were internal combustion engine vehicles, and keeping our focus on the e-mobility space, we moved into the electric vehicle space. Currently, we've been able to put together the first set of electric vans in Nigeria, which have been on the Nigerian road, especially in Lagos, since June this year. The vehicle currently is being used by GIG Logistics, and for the past 6 months, we've been getting feedbacks on operations because the vehicle has been used for cargo purpose. So we've been able to look at what the data are and what the information we get from this process is, and with that we are developing more into the area of the e-mobility space. So basically, this is what we do at Jet Motor Company. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. And I think the final person to answer this question would be Tolulope Olukokun. I believe I've asked. Would be Frank from Max.NG. Yes, apologies.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chisom. So thank you very much for the invite as well. It's a pleasure to be here to not also be among the panelists, but also to learn from the other players doing the same thing in the industry, especially in Nigeria. Just a quick background to what we're doing at Max. In the last 6 years, we've done extensive work around ICE vehicles, so vehicles that use petrol essentially. So we've been using it for drivers who do deliveries, who carry passenger vehicles. So especially on the 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers parts. But then in 2019, I think about 2-3 years ago, we looked at it and decided that, say, the entire world is going green, the entire world is going electric, and it seems Nigeria or Africa at large is sort of lagging behind on this. So we started doing extensive work around electric vehicles. So to transition from regular ICE vehicles that we give to drivers to electric vehicles, essentially, because we looked at it that even from conversations among government officials about the deregulation of the private sector in the petrol sector, so that's going to make petrol more expensive than it is. Some African countries have already done this. So this makes electric vehicles even much more what everybody should be looking at going forward. So that's what we looked at. And then we started doing work around it to see if we can buy off the shelf. So we looked at some markets in Asia to see if we can buy some electric vehicles that fits our roads in Nigeria, because it's very unique. But then what we found is a lot of the electric vehicles that you see in the market today are more fancy than operational, especially if looking at it with the Nigerian markets. The roads are bad. The drivers are Nigerian drivers, putting it mildly. So we needed something that's robust, that can withstand sort of the conditions here in Nigeria. So I think someone, yeah. So we couldn't get that. That means we had to go back in-house and then sort of design this. So when Tolulope, I think Tolulope was talking about them manufacturing. So we had to design it in-house specifically. So we've been doing extensive work around electric vehicles. So we've developed, I think we're on the fourth iteration of the electric vehicle, the M3. So we've gone from M1, M1.5, M2, and then to the M3. So the M3 is sort of the bikes that we've put in the market. We've been doing a lot of work with the bikes in a community in Ogun State called Bamu for the last 18 months, really. So we've collected a lot of data around this based on mileage, based on battery usages. So everything around it. So we've learned a lot in the last 2 years deploying these bikes in that community. At the moment, we've also deployed in Lagos for Jumia deliveries mainly. So some of our bikes, you might see some of the bikes are doing deliveries for Jumia today. So in a nutshell, this is what we've been doing around the electric vehicle sector since. Thank you very much, Chisom.
Thank you so much, Frank. A lot of the things that you said were leading into my second question. So I would just start with you and just speaking about the transition from ICE vehicles to EVs. There are lots of challenges, from compressed development timescales to the regulatory limits to even technology churn. This means that as a people, we need to adapt very quickly to the changes. What's your take on the current rate of transition from internal combustion engine vehicles to EVs?
So thank you very much. Yeah, it's not going to be, I won't come out here and say it's going to be easy or going to be straightforward, the transition, especially on the psyche of people. People are used to combustion engines in Nigeria, and it's going to take a lot of work to convince them. But that's where Max comes in. So we at Max, we're not just giving vehicles to drivers. We have a lot of conversations with drivers that we've been doing even while we're using combustion engine. So it puts us in a very healthy place, because a lot of these drivers, over close to 10,000 drivers already, know us. We've had businesses with them over the last 6 years. So the part of credibility also comes in from who is pushing this. So that credibility on our part is also an important part. And then what we've also noticed during our research and sort of deploying the vehicles actually is making the vehicles closer to what they know. So the M3 vehicles that we have today have essentially the same parts that irregular two-wheeler bikes have. Everything that you see in a two-wheeler bike is the same thing. The only difference is the battery, the controller. Those are that's the difference. So the feel of riding the bikes, aside the noise, but then the feel, the handle, the way you ride it, all the parts. So even if your glass breaks, you can replace it with irregular combustion engine bikes. So that is also going to go a long way into pushing this. And then on the regulatory side, at the moment, one of the biggest challenge for electric vehicles is, I think you mentioned it in the beginning, or someone mentioned it in the beginning, is the charging stations. So I think that's where the major bottleneck is. But I don't think there's anything around regulation, but it's about who is going to make that first step into deploying charging stations across Nigeria or across Lagos or across whatever city it is in Africa that you want to deploy. So that's going to be one of the major challenges. But then what we're doing at Max is to have sort of swap stations, but long-term charging stations are going to be the way forward. So the way you have petrol stations across places, that's the way basically charging stations should be. So for people who are moving around with the electric vehicles. So those are the things that will make adoption of these vehicles much more easy and much more acceptable to people.
Thank you. One of the key things that you mentioned was the need to make these EVs relatable in terms of look and feel for for the drivers, and why that is important, and why it's also important for them to be able to source parts without too many issues, and the need for charging stations as well. Tolulope, I'd really like to get your perspective on this as well.
Please, I would like you to repeat the question so that I can get it properly.
Okay, so I was asking, considering the challenges, what is your take on the current rate of transition from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles?
Oh, okay. Well, it's zero. The level of transition is zero right now, because the people, the big players are supposed to be working to see the transition fast-tracked are really sleeping. They're not doing as much as they should. A lot of things are around this thing. There's been a lot of debate on what should come first, the charging infrastructure or the e-mobility itself. Was it not last year Hyundai launched the electric vehicle Kona, but that's not attractive to the common man, considering the price tag and all of that. So the best way or the fastest way to accelerate this adoption is via public transport, right? When we can have some level of subsidy or any kind of model that you have electric vehicle for public transportation for people to use, like Jet said they are doing with GIG. You cannot begin to roll out cars for private use at this level and you say the transition will be accelerated or fast-tracked. So currently we are not looking at the mass transit, because come to think of it, 80% Nigerians of Africa make use of public transportation. Even right now, as attractive in price or whatever as internal combustion vehicles will be, it takes it's less than 20% that could afford it. And if you look at the buying power or purchasing strength of the whole of Africa when it comes to brand new vehicles in the whole world, we are 1%. Africa, the whole of Africa is just 1%, when China is having over 30%, Europe, America, 30% and all, So you begin to see that private cars for electric vehicles are not attractive at this level, and they cannot help us to move towards that sustainability of electric vehicle quickly. So we should be looking at what's it called, mass transportation, so that a lot of people can start making use of it. What people need is to move from point A to point B. So they really do not care if it's electric or if it's petrol. They just want to move. But for us that knows that there are a lot of advantages for the driver, for people that are working, and all of that, we begin to look into mass transportation. That's where all investment should be going into right now in order for us to accelerate this transition. And again, I think charging station will not be attractive at this level because the adoption is still low. So you begin to ask, and I've seen people asking at the comment section that how price attractive are these stuff and all of that. Well, at the current level, because of the battery technology, they are not very attractive, right? But then we'll go further to invest in charging from home via solar panel, charging from home via conversion of biogas to electricity, because that's why we research on biogas, for people to be able to convert to electricity and charge up their EVs, whichever one they're having. And until we have full adoption, or we have quite a lot of this vehicle in circulation for mass transit or mass transportation before charging station could be attractive and could be reasonable for investment. So majorly, if you ask me the rate right now, there are a lot of players, right? But it's like dropping water in the ocean when it comes to the size of Nigeria, when it comes to the size of Africa as a whole. We are not doing as much as other countries are doing. So I think the level of adoption is still at zero for me, my opinion. But going forward, as we begin to include, intensify efforts, Jets doing what they are doing, Max doing what they are doing, Thinkbikes doing what they are doing, and we begin to sensitize people, we begin to educate them, we begin to build their capacity to be able to take care of these vehicles when they eventually come. I will tell you a story. In 2012, during the Occupy Nigeria, I wanted to go out, there was no fuel and all of that, and I was tired of it. I had to, get to know that was what brought me into EV world anyway, apart from the fact that I'm an automobile person. I studied mechanical engineering and major in automobile technology in school. So I began to search for other ways of propelling my car, and electric vehicle came up. And Nissan will be the first mass-produced electric vehicle for people at that time. I called Nissan Lagos and I was like, can I get this Nissan Leaf? And they were like, well, it's available, but it's not meant for Nigerian market due to obvious reasons. I do not blame them for anything. They said we don't have technical hands, tech experts to take care of it. We don't have the infrastructure like electricity and all of that. And that was what brought me into it, that how can we solve our own problem? I mean, technologies should be adapted to the peculiarities of our environment, right? We cannot just say it's working in America, it must work here. No, we will look, Tesla built Tesla, the electric vehicle, for the environment because they have what they have. Though when it comes to the electricity demand of electric vehicle is a major problem for everyone. And there is a prediction that US may suffer blackout if everybody adopts electricity in US, because the current infrastructure for electricity, the current utility are not built to serve those massive demand right now. So there will be some structural change, which will be utility change, which could also be expensive. So there is a challenge everywhere you go when it comes to the adoption, but they are still in a better, situation that we have. So that was what brought me in there, and to develop the capacity to develop people that will be able to take care of this EV when we eventually get there, because we have the talents, we have the skills, we only need to aggregate it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for that very extensive answer. We have lots of questions coming in the comment section. It's bubbling, and I'm hoping that we can get to it. Glory, what's your perspective on this, on the current state of transition from internal combustion engines to EVs? Tolulope has said that he feels the transition is zero, and he thinks that the direction we should be moving in is considering mass transportation.
Absolutely. So the truth is that Nigeria is a fossil fuel powered economy, right? So we cannot really ignore that truth. So that's how we should start, from that basics, that our government is dependent on oil to power their economy. So you can imagine that the senators all said, I know I wrote about it in one of my articles, where they all said they don't see a future in electric cars because who's going to buy their oil? Who's going to buy their fuel? So this has actually caused the low transition that we can see, especially the government's reluctance in creating policy and regulation for this sector. Of course, we know that if there is policy and regulation, then there will be incentives for automobile makers and to encourage entrepreneurship in the sector. So another thing that I'd like to agree with what Tolulope said concerning mass transit. I've always talked about it too, about how we should remove our focus from electric cars being luxury to looking at the problem that it can solve for our mass transit, right? And when I talk mass transit, I talk about the regular ways that we transport ourselves in Nigeria, thinking about tricycles, thinking about two-wheelers, right? So, but there's something interesting happening in Nigeria at the moment, and I'd like to share it. in every development, you would notice something. Even if there's a delay in the government making a regulation, the private sector always picks it up. Now, what's happening in Nigeria now is that a lot of private sector players are simulating business ideas, testing out business models, gradually stimulating people's interests in electric cars. Now, whether the government is not answering or not, what I see happening is that in the next couple of years, this industry will pick up. Then the government will be forced to make a regulation concerning it, right? Because they will be losing money, right? So there is a lot of traction that we have seen in the electric car industry. And one company that I interviewed, Cleed Electrics, said that they did a survey. Now, in that survey, they talked to a lot of Nigerians who were very interested in using electric cars. And what I mean by that, I think he was interviewing them for electric keke, right? So the transition is slow because our government is oil-based, but I can see a lot of prospects and positivity happening on the side as well. So right now, the industry is still nascent, meaning it's very young, but with players like the ones that we have on the panel and a lot of other people who have not come to the fore, a lot of students who are building electric bikes, building electric tricycles, they are answering to the need of public mass transit mostly is what I can see. EV for luxuries will not work for our economy. So it can work a little bit. And in Lagos, Nigeria, you could see some luxury EVs like Tesla, very few. But when you think about electric vehicles like that, it's not really answering to our problems, the problems that we have. So someone mentioned about charging as well being an issue. The truth is that I also commend what people like Max.NG is doing. I shared that as a business model to deploy electric vehicles very easily, that such partnerships would aid this transition faster, where a solar company can come together with an automobile producer or manufacturer, right, to provide that source of power. So even though our electric system is very poor currently, there's a lot solar power can do. There's a lot solar power is doing at the moment for electric vehicles. And one very interesting thing I'll quickly say is that the fact that Nigeria has a policy and regulation for renewable energy is, is very, very enabling for electric vehicle deployments. So the country has, sorted out renewable energy, has a lot of different regulations for mini grid, regulations for solar home system. Now that is very enabling for EVs, because if we can develop the renewable energy sector, we can ascertain power to charge the electric vehicles, right? So there's a lot to explore in those areas. The industry is nascent. People are doubting if EVs will work in Nigeria because we don't have light. They're forgetting to think about the fact that we can utilize or leverage on solar power, which other developed countries do not have a lot of. They don't have sun all around the year. We have sun all around the year. And I always, imagine what can happen if we can utilize this for electric cars. So that's what's happening in this industry at the time. The government is not willing because they sell oil. Private sector business players are exploring the industry and they are seeing prospects. The people are in between, anyone that works. I interviewed a keke guy and he said outrightly that he's not going to take a electric keke. His reason is that he doesn't think it's reliable, and he wants to try it out first before he can take it. So that also leads me to sensitization. You see, it's going to be a mindset shift that has to happen, right? So there's a lot of things that must work together for this sector to thrive. And going further into the talk, eventually, I'll talk about some companies who are already doing well in the sector in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We'll be moving on to Uchendu. And just asking, what are the prospects for the production and assembling of EVs, especially, especially here in Nigeria?
Sorry, please, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, so very briefly, could you tell us what the prospects are for producing and assembling EVs in Nigeria?
Okay, let me just take off from the previous question, which was talking about the acceptability and adoption of e-mobility in Nigeria. So firstly, a lot of sense.
Is it my network?
Hello, it looks like Mr. Uchendu is having.
Because I remember initially when training, the drivers are coming up.
I believe there's a bit of a network issue. Can everyone hear Mr. Uchendu? So while he's handling the network issue, we can quickly move on to the next question. Yeah, so let's quickly move on to the next question. I believe that there's a network challenge, and this is for back to Frank. What are the business models available for electric vehicle manufacturers? If you could just briefly speak to these points, that would be great.
Sorry, can you come again? Your line broke a bit. So what are
the business models available for EV manufacturers and sellers in Nigeria?
Okay, thanks. Maybe I'll just piggyback a bit to what Glory was saying and then use it to sort of answer the question. I'll try and be brief. So looking at the source of power, the source of energy, where people are going to charge, I see a lot of the questions also in the chat. So the major approach is having mini grid developers. Max, today, when I was talking about the Bamu deployments that we did, we had to partner with a mini grid developer. It wasn't from a direct source because one, it's a rural area, so electricity from the national grid is not there. So we had to partner with a mini grid developer who has a station there to build sort of a mini charging station and sort of a swap station. So that's one model I would say can work and can make sense for everybody involved. I think one of the panelists was saying one person really can't do everything. There's a lot of processes. There's a lot of value proposition in each of the models. So having partnerships with mini grid developers is one key place that a lot of things can happen. A lot of things can change for the EV mobility sector, especially in Nigeria. And then also for the sales, I would say I'll lean more towards, yes, mass transit, and also the gig, what the gig work has given us in Nigeria. So Bolt, GoCada, Uber, so things like that. I agree that using private to penetrate the market, looking at private sector is going to be a bit difficult to penetrate the market. But then having partnerships with these kind of gig workers, with the drivers directly, or with the companies itself that can make access to the drivers available to any of the players will be a big plus to having a penetration of the EVs in Nigeria. So those are the two major places I would say, yes, this can actually work.
Thank you so much for that answer. And just before I move on to Glory, I just want to touch on what you mentioned about partnerships. And could you just tell us, even just looking at the e-mobility sector, there's a lot of room for partnerships that will sort of ease off the burden of cost on both the demand and supply side. Just like the recent partnership you entered with Bolt. In a minute or two, Max, can you please buttress on how these partnerships can create opportunities for growth?
So I'll still use the use case for what we're doing at Max. So what we've been doing, even for the ICE vehicles, is to give, we know that there's a stream of income from these drivers. We can see what the history looks like. That's what the partnership with Bolt offers us. So we can look at and then run it with our model. So we have an internal model that tells us if this driver is eligible, if this driver can pay back the money for this vehicle over a certain period of time, whatever period of time it is that we look at that makes sense, based on the earnings that this person has been making on that platform. So it's easy to ascertain what this person can do and what this person can do. So we've done the partnership in such a way that with the current earnings of the drivers, we can say this is how much the drivers can pay daily, weekly, or monthly over a 3-year period, over a 4-year period. Like one of the participants said, especially on the EV side, but a lot of the cost burden is on the battery side. So, but then if using the charging, the swap side, so instead of the driver can pay for just the shell of the EV and then have sort of a swapping station where the driver can go pay a token and swap the batteries. So it makes the price, it brings the price down and then helps the driver to pay for that vehicle over time. So that's what this kind of partnerships can help you do. You know the amounts that the drivers make in a day, and you can modulate to say, can this driver pay for this vehicle over time? Most times the answer is yes, if you look at it deeply, and that's what we've been able to do at Max.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That was very succinct. And we'll also be asking Glory her perspective on this as well. You know, what are the business models available for EV manufacturers and sellers? In a minute or two, please give us your perspective.
Of course, thank you so much. So what I've seen in my time in this industry is that a lot of people must work together. I wrote in one of my articles, I'll share it on the link, how EV developers could work together with charge stations. Now, I want to say something about charging station. I think someone said on the chat about how there can be no EVs if there's no charging stations. Now, electric vehicles and charging stations are like what is called a chicken and egg problem. You cannot have one without the other, but you cannot say, let you wait. Oh, let's wait. Since if I put a EV charging station now, who's going to charge there? But you'll be surprised that if you establish an EV charging station, then you will see the EV cars, right? So it has to work together like that. So one quick business model I see is there's something interesting that can happen between, and I'm speaking about where I see a market in our country, which is the mass transit sector, because people need to move around. In places like Lagos, tricycles are banned, but tricycles are used, I think, in other places around the country. There's a very interesting business model that can happen between tricycle operators and solar power producers, right? So there's already something like that happening currently in Onisha, where we're working with a developer to produce power for the tricycle operators. So basically, tricycle operators will come every morning and pick up the EV that is fully charged, and then they go about their daily activities. Now they don't have to worry about fuel anymore. So those kind of partnerships are independent of one another and have to work together to pick up, to kickstart like that. Then another thing I see is somebody wrote me on LinkedIn saying that, oh, he has a station where he sells gas. And please, if I know of anyone who wants to put a electric vehicle charging there, it's very willing. I've gotten over 100 of those kinds of messages. So people are even, it means that people are already seeing that there is a future here and they're willing to make their spaces available, right? So this kind of partnership can work with a EV charger deployer and such a person who has that space. They can work together. And I mentioned that there is a company, First Electric, that I've worked with, who are importing EV charging equipment. So I know that right now they're working on establishing some charging stations in Nigeria. They are also looking to work with people who own gas stations, where people go to buy gas, where people go to fuel their cars with gas. That is a way that the partnerships can work. And another thing that can work is designating battery swap. So I talked about Rubitech Solar, yes, who's already doing that kind of partnership with Max.NG. And Rubitech Solar's model interests me a lot because they are a solar company and I am in the solar industry as well. I'm very interested because Rubitech has a mini grid in Wamu. Now, charging EVs in their mini grid provides a base load actually for their mini grid. And it's not just helpful for charging the cars. The fact that they are charging the cars helps them with extra load for their mini grid. So do you see how the two can come together? Right. So these are the ways I'm looking at it. Solar companies work with EV companies, automobile makers. Like there's a typical example with in South Africa. There's a company called, I can't remember their name now, but they are working with automobile importers and manufacturers. So what they do is this: these people that import the cars go and make alliances with other people and tell them to create charging stations for them in the areas where their customers live, right? So that, in fact, this thing helps them sell more cars because their customers are worried about how to charge. Now they can just say, oh, beside you in your address, you have this place to charge. So they work with these charging infrastructure providers to put charging stations near where their customers live. Now, that's another way that importers or manufacturers can work together. So the truth is that it's important, very important, to look at how our own country fits into all of this. Look at what is currently obtainable and see how it can work. So I know that some people that I've worked with, and another thing, there's another business model that I heard about in India. I consulted with a company in India who wanted to enter the African market. Now, the interesting thing is what that they were doing with tricycles was that they charge these tricycles and they have people who are driving it for them and returning money every day. And that's the business model. When we looked at our Nigerian market, and when we talked to some people in Nigeria, we found that Nigerian keke drivers did not like the idea, right? They wanted keke or tricycles that they can do what this thing they called hire purchase. So they want to take it and give you money in a year. So it's very important for the so I'll share an article to delve more into this piece of it.
All right, thank you. There's a bit of a lag from my end. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Please, did everyone hear me? It looks like it was my own internet.
No, I did up until the 3 seconds. We heard you.
Okay.
We heard you fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
this question was for please go on mute. If you have a comment, could you please just leave it in the chat box and we'll be sure to attend to it in the next few minutes. As we begin to round off this panel and start the questions in the chat box, I'd like to ask, and in no particular order, in terms of capacity building, are engineers or technicians in the solar industry required to pick up new skills? And are there opportunities for new engineers in the field? Now, we'd really like to attend to as much questions as possible, so I kindly ask that we just keep the answer as concise and as brief as possible so that we can attend to as many questions as possible and not overshoot our time. And so we can start with Mr. Tolulope. Again, just to repeat the question, in terms of capacity building, are engineers or technicians in the solar industry to take up new skills? And are there opportunities for new engineers in this field?
Yeah, thank you very much. I would have loved to talk about the model as well, but then I think it has been dealt with. But let me establish that for investors, right? For investors, charging station is not attractive right now in Nigeria because you are going to wait a whole long time before you start having the return on that investment. So what we should work on majorly is to make sure we have availability of those vehicles. E-mobility generally, it doesn't have to be electric vehicles alone, like tricycles that Max is doing, electric bicycles that we are also doing, and all. A combination of all of these will start to make charging stations attractive for investors. So majorly everybody will sort themselves now. If you have a phone and you are charging your phone, despite the situation we have, some have 2 phones and all. So you can still, survive with your electric mobility. Now, are there opportunities? Immense opportunity. You need to know the population of Nigeria of Africa for you to realize that it will create a lot of jobs. You know, transitioning to e-mobility, it's what African continent really need right now to put a lot of people to jobs, different kind of jobs along the value chain, the charging, the repairs, the maintenance, the everything, the manufacturing, everything, a lot of jobs. And you see, renewable energy sector has been poised to create a lot of jobs than it will remove. I don't know how to put that. A lot of people will lose their jobs, right, because of this transition. But the amount of jobs that will be created are much more than the ones that will be lost. That's what I'm saying. So in terms of capacity building, you know, I told you that's what we are doing. At every opportunity we get, that's what we want to do. I run a YouTube channel where I put all of these educational videos on renewable energy, on electric mobility, different ones, you know, and I mean, it's gathering some strength. A lot of Africans are learning from that space. About 44,000 subscribers now and over 3 million views in general. So I think we are doing our best from my hand. Yeah, I think Electric Africa, because that's our calling, want to engage with these young people so that they have the necessary skills as at when we are into the full transition. And mind you, Nigerians are very skillful. We have people winding motors already right now. We have people repairing batteries already right now. We have people doing a lot of electronics, wiring, some they call them rewire. But what we are saying is they are using those skills in different sectors, right? What we are now saying is we want to aggregate them for the electric mobility so that they can start to work in the electric mobility sector. So there are countless of opportunities. It's what we need right now to improve our economy, to increase the job opportunities and all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Uchendu, can we get your perspective on this as well? And
Yes.
Tolulope, if you share the link to your YouTube channel, I'm sure a lot of the participants will be very eager to watch your videos and learn a lot about EVs.
All right, thank you very much. I'm sorry I had some network issues before. So let me just quickly touch the question you asked me earlier concerning the prospects in the area of the electric vehicle assembly and the rest. Basically, with the deployment of the jet EVs, which we did in June this year, a lot of tractions have come both on request and on demand for electric vehicles. It will be surprising that with the fact that we are skeptical and afraid that Nigerians will not move or transit easily into this space. But with the level of request and demand that we are getting, or people trying to find out and ask about these vehicles, it shows that there are a lot of interest in the area of electric vehicles. People have gone to inspect our charging stations, the one we installed both on the mainland, the one we have on the island, and to see how they work and the charging capacity of these charging stations. And the impression has been enormous. What they see and the time range in charging and the rest, it has created a lot of awareness, and people are trying to find out more, trying to inquire and trying to know what it costs, even though it's expensive at the moment. But we know that gradually it will become better and easier to acquire. Now, going back to what you asked concerning the opportunities in the area, there are a lot of opportunities on the supply chain for e-mobility. A lot of opportunities, a lot of jobs, and a lot of things are being done in that field. This is a compilation of a whole lot: the electricals, the mechanicals, few mechanicals, the computer, the IT related part of it. So there are a lot the e-mobility space is going to offer to the Nigerian automotive market. A lot, which I know that gradually, when the acceptability and adoption is increasing and is becoming the way it's supposed to be, more people will be trained, which currently we are doing. We are training some of our technicians currently on maintenance of these vehicles, because currently we have them flying the Lagos road on a daily basis. So trainings are going on a regular, and people are learning how to manage and how to do one or two things that has to do with in relation to maintenance of these electric vehicles.
All right. Thank you so much for that answer. Next, we just have Frank also let us know his perspective on this in terms of capacity building and new opportunities for engineers in the field.
Okay, thank you. Yes, there's a whole bunch of opportunities. Last week I had a conversation with someone at Lucid in America. I don't know if you know the company. It's a publicly listed electric vehicle company in America. So he's a Nigerian actually, but he works at Lucid. So he said a bunch of stuff about the opportunities that are available in Nigeria, especially around the manufacturing side. So he was running some numbers with me. The amounts they have to pay someone in America, sort of like a worker in one of their should I say warehouses where they manufacture these EVs, and then looking at it based on what potentially is payable in a country like Nigeria. And he was saying the skills needed for it is very, very low. It's something that they can teach. In fact, most of the states in the US where they had to go, they had to sort of teach everybody that comes in from scratch, like a deep teach for them to be able to carry out the work. So it's way cheaper in Nigeria to do this. So there are a lot of companies. So he was also saying that they're thinking about setting up manufacturing hubs in Africa, especially Nigeria. So like that's just one part. And if there's a large manufacturing company like a Lucid that is coming to Nigeria, or in Nigeria already, or probably Tolulope's company decides to manufacture 1,000 EVs, think about what that is going to do on the manufacturing side alone. So, and then for those who are already in solar, the knowledge transfer is very, very huge. What you need to brush up on is very, very minimal. It's minimal to zero. So it's easily transferable from what you're currently doing to transfer it to the electric vehicles. What you need to learn is very, very tiny, if you ask me. So, but I would say in the entire value chain, there's a lot of opportunities that Tolu has mentioned, but I would also look at the manufacturing side. It's a whole lot of opportunities. And technology-wise too, there's a lot of technology that is coming out every day, daily, on how to improve electric vehicles.
Yeah, thank you so much for your apologies. You're still speaking. I think from my end, I've experienced a bit of a network issue. I thought you had finished, but you can go on and just round up what you were saying before we move on to Tolulope.
Is that me?
Yes. I believe
okay,
I cut you off.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It's that's actually all I wanted to say. That's fine. You can go on.
All right. So, and I think the final person to give her perspective on this would be Glory. And it's interesting because you run a training institute, so you're neck deep in terms of capacity building and training in this space. But even more specifically, I think I'd like for you to speak to what specific skills the engineers already in the space and those looking to join the industry can learn to position themselves properly enough to get jobs in this space and build careers in the industry.
Of course, thank you for that. I won't speak much because the people here have already talked a lot. So the EV sector interests me because it brings a lot of spaces together: transport sector, the solar sector, the power sector, the transmission sector. And so there's a concept called vehicle to everything, V2X, right? So it means the prospects of later having channeling power and electricity from your vehicle to your home, from your vehicle back to the grid, from your vehicle to your building or to power your farm nearby. So it's very interesting. And I did a course on this about how the EV sector relates to the power sector. Just in these two industries alone, there's a lot of skills that can be developed, ranging from solar engineering to mechanical engineering to work on the EV cars or the EV tricycles. And then you talk about transmission coordinator, transmission engineers, people who can develop apps, people who are good in developing apps. So I can count up to 10 different skills and areas where people can develop capacity. Right now, RETTI, we're working on it to actually release some of those courses very soon. And I must applaud what people like Tolulope are already doing, trying to share what I would call a raw type of knowledge, experiential type of learning. So there's also welders also come into it. There's welding, there's capacity building for welding people I know someone who's already doing this, who's training welders to couple these electric vehicles in the East. There is another initiative by the Ebonyi State government called Zero Oil Economy Initiative. Now they have trained women to build electric tricycles. So you see, there's a lot of ways it can come together, talking about empowering people who work with NEPA to improve their capacity for at RETTI right now, we won't have people coming from NEPA to ask for courses on this. So people should get ready for this new economy, right? People should get ready for these new skills. And we at RETTI want to also, see how we can play a role on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all the panelists for sharing all these resources and insights on this space. As expected, there are quite a lot of questions, and we'll just try to run through as many of them as we can. But I hope that you'll be gracious enough to respond to us if we follow up with emails or questions and answers during this webinar. I will just quickly go on to the chat box, and anyone is free to answer the question. So someone was asking, Lubem Gina was asking, how pocket friendly are the electric vehicles? How many units? So this question is quite a mouthful. How many units do you have in the market already? And how much more can be added to the market in the next 5 years, for instance? Does anyone want to take this question and just briefly share with us?
Yeah, I think the question has been answered in the chat box too, or during one of our conversations there. The truth is that it's not pocket friendly right now, especially even in America. The Teslas and all, they are working so much to bring the cost down. I'll make it at par with that of electric, that of internal combustion engines. But the truth is that if considering the exchange rate, if you are talking about Nigeria context now, it's still not affordable. Okay, Hyundai Kona came in, they said they are assembling locally, yet they put a price tag of 24 million on Hyundai Kona. So how many people can afford that? So the truth is that it's not until we start to do one thing, manufacture locally, like many of the players here are doing, local manufacturing, to cut away the shipping, the import duty and all of that, and be left alone with what's it called? Just the normal annual tax and all of that. And with that, you are even putting many people to work. And like Glory said, which I also try to say is, we have skills, we have people with skills, but they are not aggregated towards e-mobility. We need to aggregate them. We need to bring them together. Now they are training welders in the line of coupling electric vehicle. That's some sort of aggregation. We begin to train rewires, we begin to train all the people. All of this will bring the cost down. And let me tell you one thing we are doing. We are recycling batteries here for our electric bicycles. And that's to cut costs massively, at least by 40%. So we are also in partnership with one startup now, Celu, who is actually good at recycling those cells for us. And we are working towards that, to making sure that our bicycles are very, very affordable,
So does it come in?
Basically, it's currently not very attractive. In the next 5 years, yes, it will be very attractive. It will be the order of the day. It will be what everybody is looking at, especially if we do not stop all these efforts that we have discussed today. If every key players put all hand on deck. I'm right here in Abuja with the IFAIR, and I'll be speaking on the same thing tomorrow, and in the presence of the Vice President And I hope I'll be able to talk to them what they need to do, the policies they need to put in place for e-mobility to grow in Nigeria. Because we can't do without it. It's the future. It's what we must all do. Because the oil will soon become a stranded asset. That's my response to that question.
And this next question goes to Frank. And it is, what is the kilowatt hour rate for charging?
Okay, at the moment, the long range bikes that we have can do up to between 100 and 120 kilometers for one charge. So for the how much it's charged. So what we're doing in Bamu at the moment, the current farmers that use our vehicles there, they pay say between 2,000 and 2,500 naira per day. They spend about 2,000 2,500 per day for petrols before we came in, and then but what we charge them per day for the swapping of the batteries is roughly 500 to 700 naira, just about 500 naira a day to swap the batteries. So I'd say that's how much we charge relatively. And what we've done so that to increase the lifespan of the batteries is to make sure that each of the batteries does not go down to lower than 40% of the charge. So for one charge, the person can do 40%, 60% of 120 kilometers in a day before the person comes in and swaps it. I hope that answers it. Yeah.
Yes, it does. There's another question for you. What is the speed of your E2W and E3W? What is the maximum kilometer? I believe that. Okay. What is the maximum kilometer a full battery can go?
Yeah, that's why I answered it. I think I saw the question. It's between 100 and 120 kilometers per charge.
Yes, I believe you answered that. I'm just looking through the rest of the questions, and a lot of these questions have been answered in the course of this conversation. So we'll just slowly begin to round things up. Thank you to the panelists.
Chisom. Yeah, Chisom, sorry, please. I'd like to just make more quick, just quickly, please. I'd like to add to what Ms. Tolulope said. I just want to ask Mr. Tolulope, if you're considering, you were talking about the models, the units being expensive. Are you considering working with, because now I know there's a lot of bicycles for delivery right now. I know R&G who is doing something like that. I don't know if it's with e-bikes, but I see a good partnership that can happen between you two, R&G. So there's a lot of people coming up doing food deliveries with bike. So I see electric bicycles doing, being a very good fit. I don't know what you think, or if you've considered that to do that kind of partnership.
Yeah, believe you me, we've seen so many of them. It's around 360 you meant to say anyway. They are doing their delivery with mechanical bicycles. They contacted me via a third party recently to see how they can secure their bicycles, but then they are not really looking at electric bicycles right now because it's not cost friendly, So when our product is out, we'll begin to see whether we want to compete or collaborate. So basically, we are open to working with everybody in the sector, because I saw in the chat box right now somebody saying everybody is doing the same thing in different directions. Yes, it is necessary. Tesla is doing their own, Nissan is doing their own, Chevrolet are doing their own, and all to accelerate the adoption. So you go for your choice. Right now, I'm focusing on micromobility. Max is focusing on a different sector of micromobility in a different area. JetTV are focusing on passengers and cargo. It's all good. Let us see how we begin to do these things until we have the strength to come together and say, okay, let us have an agenda or a policy towards a common goal. And one thing we need to be looking at right now is a common charging infrastructure. Because I still saw in one of the charts that somebody is saying, what type of charging model are we adopting? Is it type C, type 1, type 2, all of that? You see, Africa as a whole do not need to follow the Western world. That's what we are doing at Africa NEF. we are trying to see how we can all come together and have one single unit of charging structure. I was in Senegal a week ago, and I was able to plug in my phone to their wall because we are all using 220, right? 220, 240. That's what we need to look. I don't want to drive to Ghana and start looking for a different pin mount for my EV, you know? So we need to start, you know, this agenda for Africa to say, okay, oh, let us have a policy for manufacturers to be able to give us one type of charging infrastructure that will cut across the whole African countries so that we don't have these differences in all of that. So Glory, to your question, I appreciate it. We are looking at all partnership we can get, but we are still a startup, you know. We need to test the market. We need to get to the market first and see how other things come along. I hope that answers your question, really.
Hello, Gloria, are you there?
Can anybody hear me? I mean, was it my network?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. So maybe there's a bit of an issue with Glory, but we heard you loud and clear. And I was just about to say, you know, to ask for any final feedback from the panelists, and even more especially to you, Tolulope, because I understand that you wanted to speak to the business models available for EVs. So maybe that can form a part of your final feedback.
Yeah, basically, thanks for this opportunity. It has been awesome meeting with the likes of Max. I've always read about them. I see how they quickly transition to EV when there were difficulties with the policies in Lagos and all of that. Yes, it's beautiful. And with Glory, it's my first time meeting you, and I appreciate the work you're doing. Everybody that is on the panel, I appreciate your works. I mean, it's no-brainer that we almost converge at some point to begin to work towards the same goal. We are in Nigeria right now. We could have a common, like you know, these transmission companies, the telecommunication companies, I mean, they all came in and they started erecting BTS everywhere. It was expensive because the locals now see their land as an asset. They go there and say, okay, let us I want to erect a BTS here. They give them a very high cost. MTL will go, Glow will go, different ones. But at a point, they started having co-location. Let us have one BTS and all our radios on it, right? So all the players, we need to come down to a table, especially on the charging infrastructure, and say, how much can you contribute to us having a charging infrastructure, a charging station here? Then we begin to look at it and say, okay, let us have one uniform kind of charging, you know, for this. Okay, Thinkbikes, we can only contribute 20% of the cost. Max, you guys are big, contribute 40%. Oh, GIG, you've got a lot of investment. You can contribute the rest of the percentage, you know? We begin to come together and say, okay, this is what we can do together when it comes to charging infrastructure. We don't need a foreign investor from India or any other place to do that. In fact, our charging stations can be locally manufactured because that's one of the things we are doing locally here. So I see how we can collaborate, but do we have the power now, or do we have the will if to go by that? So I will implore us to look into that going forward to see how we can collaborate, how we can agree on the kind of charging we can have on our mobilities, and as well as the charging stations we can build all across. And you know, the charging stations are a means of revenue generation as well. It's not that it's going to be free. So we begin to see how we can make that investment worthwhile. That's my closing. Thank you all for listening to me today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You spoke to the need for synergy in the space, the need to collaborate and agree on, you know, certain standards and structures in the space. So, any feedback from you, Glory, as we round up?
Well, I think it's been said. So it's just looking to collaborate. I think collaboration will be very helpful, and people working together. players in the field. A lot of the players are also on the chat box. I know about 1 or 2 people that are on the chat box. See how to work together. We've created a youth coalition for electric vehicles. Let's have these conversations often and just figure it out. The truth is that there are challenges to going there where we want. It's going to take work to happen, but it's also going to take the willingness to get there and looking for solutions. As a writer, I've been criticized many times because I'm writing for EVs, because a lot of Nigerians think you're wasting your time and they don't believe that Nigeria is ready. So instead of that, let's look at the positives. What are the positives? I like to look at positive. I like to recognize young people who are actually doing something in this space, other than the people who are giving you all the reasons why it will fail, why we're not ready. I mean, development starts from one day. You have to start somewhere though, even though Africa is not ready, but they have to start somewhere to begin that journey. So good examples are all the experts on this panel, as you can see, doing something every day, working hard to get there. So let's continue to collaborate and to support. And if you hear of an opportunity, please send it across, connect with all the panelists on social media, send opportunities to them, support what they're doing, share that post. That way we can get this conversation started at the right places. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You really spoke to the need to start from somewhere and, the need to also put in the work required to push the sector forward. We'd also like any final feedback from Frank, and then we'll move on to Uchendu.
Just same as everybody has said, it's collaboration, partnerships, and we're also big on that at Max. So we're open to any kind of collaboration, anything you think that can drive the EV space forward and how we can provide value for each other in this space. So that's really what I just want to add to it. So collaborations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Uchendu, your final feedback as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Just like every other person has said, a lot of collaborations and synergy between the players in the industry will help to foster the adoption of electric vehicles. And we at JET, our focus have always been on fleets, because looking at the importance of electric vehicle fleets, especially to this our environment. So we are open to collaborations, we are open to partnerships and the rest, with the major focus of trying to foster e-mobility, especially here in Africa, and especially with vehicle fleets here in Nigeria and Africa. And also to add to it, I think the government also is somehow talking a lot more about electric vehicles also, because in some few weeks or some few months ago, we sat and discussed on national occupational standard for electric vehicles, and we had to put up some documents in regards to that. So I think the discussion is already going also into the government circle, especially with the DG of NADDC always discussing about electric vehicles. So I think it is getting the traction needed. So that is, thank you very much. That's all from my end.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to our panelists. You have been very engaging. We've learned quite a lot. And even on the chat box, beyond answering our questions, here live, you're responding to the participants. And this has been quite a learning process. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing from your experience and the expressed willingness to collaborate. I will be handing over to my colleague Bianchi to run the poll and to close out our session. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you once again to our panelists.
We see your face, Bianchi. Don't hide. Let's see your face.
All right, sure. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and to our panelists. Want to say a big thank you. I want to call on Tala to give the closing remark. We're really sorry for shooting way above our time. We apologize for that. Tala, can you please?
Thank you, Benjit. Good day, everyone. My name is Talatu, and I'm the Deputy Manager at Clean Technology Hub for the Energy Access team. I would like to repeat our thanks to all our panelists, Mr. Tolulope, we're very grateful. Thank you for all the insights. Ms. Glory, thank you once again for gracing our invitation. Mr. Frank and Mr. Uchendu, thank you so much. I mean, I'm sure we learned a lot, and I'm sure a lot of the doubting Thomases begin to see the opportunities within the e-mobility sector here in Nigeria. So thank you so much. Just to give a little, our next webinar would look like, I'm sure Bianchi, my colleague, has explained that we're having a series of webinar on the e-mobility sector, and we've already had a previous one. This is the second, and our next one will be looking into investment opportunities. I know I heard a number of our panelists explaining about how, you know, they have the means, they have the passion and the desire. Sometimes what we just need is that propelling force that comes with financing. And so we're going to be looking at reaching out to each and every one of us on this call. Also, another important thing that we'll be doing, so from today, we're launching what we call our working groups, the e-mobility working groups here at Clean Technology Hub. As I introduced this, I believe, Bianchi, there's a poll that will be shared to everyone on the call. So we will just the area that you think you would like to participate in. I know we have different people on this call with different areas of specialization and different areas of interest. So we have taken the liberty and created five of these working groups. One of which is the data collection and market information working group. Especially during our last meeting, we learned how scarce the data within the e-mobility sector is, and the need for us to, you know, begin to collate that data so that we can make meaningful decisions and also get this to our decision makers. Also, we have the infrastructure development working group. This involves those who are into manufacturing, those that want to, you know, set up the charging station, the batteries, those are specialized in spare parts. All for guys in this area, we advise that you join the infrastructure development working group. We also have the policy and regulation working group. These are those that are willing to, you know, help us to drive the energy sector, as we know that this is clearly not very. The fourth working group is the awareness and advocacy working group. I remember one of our panelists, Ms. Glory, mentioned the need to sensitize even the people who are driving these vehicles. A lot of them are not aware, you know, that this opportunity is out there and they can transition to using electric kekes or you know, go out there and say, hey, there's this move that is going on. So last but not least, the group is the access. This is what our next webinar will be focused on, and it will be interesting for us to begin to have those who can either facilitate or maybe you're into investments move towards the e-mobility working group. So Bianchi, I don't know, has the poll come up? I don't know if we've seen any poll yet. I haven't seen on my own end. Okay, yes, thank you very much for that. Okay. Yeah, so kindly indicate which of the working groups that you would like to be a part of, please, so that we can get this ball rolling. Are we having responses in yet?
Yes, so responses are coming in.
Thank you so much. Okay, that's good. We're very grateful to everyone that, you know, that joined the webinar. Thank you for your participation. We'll continue these conversations, I can assure you of that. So let's just, for those who are not on the call, I believe this will also be shared to them. Kindly indicate so we can get these conversations within the working groups started. I'm sure Bianchi will be reaching out to each and every one of us who has indicated interest. But please do not leave without. So once again, from Clean Technology Hub, just want to say a big thank you. And we appreciate your participation. Bianchi, it's back to you.
All right. So we've come to the end of the webinar. Thank you so much for your time. We went way ahead of time, but we apologize. But the discussion was getting so interesting that we couldn't just cut anyone short. So thank you very much, our panelists. Thank you for honoring our invitation, and to our participants, thank you so much for staying this far. We'll say thank you. So I'll send out a mail to everyone with the working group, so you can indicate, sorry, so you can indicate which one you would want to join, and then we'll take the discussion forward from there. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.